Welcome to Moldorma TV. I'm Tobias Alber, and this is episode number 10.
And I'm Magnus Alber. And in the previous 2 episodes, Tobias and I have discussed one journey that we decided to split into 2 parts. And in the last episode, we talked about my part, which was mainly about how consciousness is constantly rediscovering itself. And during your part, we discussed something else.
Yeah, I had this experience where I went into this different state of awareness, these different layers of awareness that consciousness travel through.
Kind of an evolution of consciousness through over a big period of time, a long period of time.
Yeah, and we talked about the symbol that Martinez has created, which I think is a great visual representation on how it is structured.
And he called these different planes or layers for kingdoms, like the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and real human kingdom and all of that. And you also associated these different layers with different colors as well.
Yeah, for example, the green one was intelligence, the yellow one was love, blue one intuition, and so on.
Yeah. And in this episode, we're going to discuss different things that I received during, I think it's 3 different journeys, but it's kind of interconnected. So we're going to discuss that today. And the thing is, after this experience, things kind of shifted where I downloaded information because of you, basically, I think.
Yeah, they actually described this in a later experience, quite recent one, where they said that usually the way it's structured is that I go into the experience, I get I go into the full experience while you get the explanation to that particular experience.
Yeah, it's like you go out there and create a channel or something, and I download information and sit by my computer and writing down everything. And the information is given to me by an entity most of the time. But it's like we have this cooperation where I receive the actual message and you go out there to grab it or something.
Space out.
Space out, yeah. That's a very good explanation of it.
Yeah.
Basically. So what happened in the next episode, in the next journey, or 3 journeys, they actually kind of reconnected to these different colors and states of awareness that you had during your experience.
Right.
Because back then, I think we talked about this in episode 8 or something, I asked you, why are these different colors? Why these colors? And
I just blurred it out because you asked the question.
Yeah. And they kind of, during this journey, they kind of explained that in more detail.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad they did, because I didn't really understand that answer. So the answer was because I had the question. That's why there is these colors.
Yeah.
Basically. And they said that it has to be in some way in the illusion. I mean, the self or consciousness is actually in itself indescribable. You cannot. It doesn't have any colors. It doesn't have any shapes, any attributes whatsoever. It's kind of nothingness.
Yeah.
But the experience that we have is an illusion created out of consciousness, and the illusion has to be in some way, and it just happens to be in this way.
Yeah.
They basically said, and the reason for that is because.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
There has to be in some way, so.
And they kind of said it like this, that if it would have been in another way, I would have asked the same questions. And they would have given me the same answer. Well, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Because it has to be in some way, and now it's in this way. And they also kind of said that God, or the higher self that created everything, is this absolute genius, and everything is perfect. So this is actually a perfect creation, and it's the best way to do it. So we just have to trust in God's creation, basically, was the message. We don't question it, just accept it as it is and stay with that.
Yeah, I think that's good teaching.
Yeah, and I was actually quite satisfied with that answer.
Yeah. So
even though it didn't really answer the question, but they actually developed this subject a little more about not asking questions.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny when you think about it. When you keep asking the questions, all you're doing is just trying to find an explanation for something that's just created. It's an illusion anyway, so
it's an illusion. And as we said in a previous episode, I think it was episode 8, when I asked how much knowledge is there, and the spiritual world said through you that infinite of, as long as you have questions, answers will be created, because they're all illusory anyway.
Yeah.
The self, the only true thing, consciousness, doesn't have any colors or properties at all. It's just something that is.
Yeah.
So what happened after this, I had this sensation that both you and I have had several times, that during this journey I could feel how everything sprang out of my consciousness, was my consciousness. Both my body and my external world. I could actually feel and see it in a way, how it beamed out of me.
Yeah.
And my body was made out of pure consciousness of beingness, as well as my external world.
Yeah. I remember when I have this experience, I don't know if it's the same for you, but usually the way I see it is, the first one is that I see like divinity in everything. That's one thing. But then in the self, when I see it like the self, it's like almost like there's some underlying white light that's shining through it, like merging out of everything. And just below everything, there's just consciousness.
I have seen it in different ways, actually. And I do think they are all kind of... None of them are actually true, because the self doesn't have any... It's not made out of light. So I think they show it in different ways, as just to show the principle, basically. Sometimes I see it as threads of energy. Sometimes I see it as like it's a movie that's being painted and things like that. So, but it's quite, intuitively that everything is me, everything is consciousness, and it's beingness, basically.
Yeah.
So, but I had a question during this experience when I saw this, and I started to think about how is it that I can move my hand and my body, which is just consciousness, but I cannot influence my external world with my will. Well, I can touch things, but I cannot make, the share come over to me like this Jedi power thing. It's just that I have to go get it.
Yeah.
Why can't I control it the way I can control my body, if it's the very same thing as my body, if it's all consciousness, my consciousness?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, in theory, everything is the self.
Yeah.
So you should have control of everything, since that's your natural state of being.
Yeah. So I had this very question, which is a good question. And they gave me a very long explanation spread out over 3 different journeys. So we're going to talk about 3 different journeys here today, and some of the material, and I'm going to leave out other material, and perhaps we talk about it in a later episode or something, or it's in the book anyway. So the first thing they said about this is that, well, why is it I can't control my external world? And they say the trick is not to ask the question. And we come back to this thing that we talked about just in a minute ago, that the trick is actually to not ask the question, because that creates the problem in the first place, in a way. And they describe it as the separation that we feel between body and external world is actually illusory.
Yeah.
It's not there, it's all one. But we identify ourselves with this body and think that external world is something else. And this thought makes it impossible for us to influence the external world as we think that we could, because we have this identification with our body and our false sense of I, basically. But I also said that that's absolutely necessary because of the principle of contrast that we talked about previous, that in order to be conscious and be God and everything, you have to have had the experience of having this separate feeling of not knowing who we are and all of that. So it was created that way, but this separation will always lead to the curiosity of what am I and what is reality. And that's what human beings are doing now. We are examining the universe and the micro and macrocosm, and we are examining our bodies, trying to figure this shit out. But we're not really getting any answers.
Yeah. Slowly approaching, I think, but not there yet.
Because what's happening is that since both the body and the universe are illusions, we're not going to understand it. We're like, I know Rupert Spira, this spiritual teacher, had this great metaphor of if you had a dream and you were inside the dream and didn't know that it was a dream, and you wanted to know, you knew it was a dream, but you wanted to know something about the one who was dreaming. It would be useless to examine the dream, the characters in the dream, because they say nothing about the dreamer. And that's the way it is in reality as well. This is all an illusion, and we cannot learn anything about the self by examining the illusion. We have to turn inwards towards self.
Yeah, it's I think Alan Watts describes it like the knife can't cut itself, or the eye can't see itself. It's the real you is something that's not out there. It's just you have to go within yourself and find out.
And that was what I meant with the trick is not to ask the question, because the answer is not out there. It's in here, inside of you, and you don't have to go anywhere. And the only way to listen, to know, all of the knowledge is already inside of us. And the only thing that is preventing us from hearing the answers are our thoughts that is distracting us. So if we don't ask question and go into the now and just be quiet in the mind, we will know how this is possible.
Yeah, that's our natural state of being, where we just are. We are not our thoughts. But I think it's really hard, since we, throughout our lives, once we grow up and we create our egos, we get so attached to this reality within our egos. So all the thoughts that we have, we associate with. But I think the first step into like breaking this this habits is just to realize that you are not your thoughts. And once you realize that, you can just see the thoughts like pass by like a ship on the ocean. And when you have practiced this long enough, you can perhaps go into this state of just being.
And it's actually, we have not only had this habit this life, we have been in this habit for thousands of lives, or perhaps hundreds of thousands of lives that we have been unconscious. So we are very attached and strongly identified with our physical reality. So we need to start to break that up. And they just said the thing you have to do in order to understand yourself, and what understanding yourself is actually what we call enlightenment. So that is to just be. And that's why you need to meditate and all of that stuff. That's one technique, at least. You don't have to meditate. You can do other techniques as well.
But I started to think about a guru from India called Nisargadatta Maharaj. He was just a guy from India, Bombay, who was a cigarette salesman. And he had a guru which just said that see everything as the self. See that you are the self, and see that everything that you see is just the self. Similar to what we experienced in our journeys. So he just kept this thought within his head and just meditated on it, tried to apply it to his everyday life. And this was a guy who didn't really have any spiritual teachings at all or anything, but he kept having this state of this thought, like I am the self, and the self is everything. And eventually the answers just came to him. He just started like talking, and all these spiritual great teachings just came out of this man who wasn't educated enough anything, haven't had any prior teachings at all.
He was basically living in a slum selling cigarettes, and suddenly he became enlightened, and everything was inside of him.
So we just turn to the self.
And that's the only place where we're going to find any truth. Is within ourselves. So we must learn to just be. And also,
these teachings that are out there, of course, they are just ways for you to turn inwards. That's all they are there to do, actually.
But that's also important to understand that the journey that we are doing in the physical is absolutely necessary for consciousness to have. because in order to be able to experience your true self, you must have experienced separation and unconsciousness and all that, because of the principle of contrast that we have discussed so many times.
Yeah.
You cannot know what warm is if you don't know what cold is, and you cannot know what it is to be God if you not have the experience of not being God. So they said that in order to understand that there is nothing to understand, you have to do this entire journey of searching for answers, and finally you will realize that, okay, there's really nothing to understand out here. I just need to go turn inside and find the self. And the self is not really the kind of knowledge that we are thinking of. It's not an intellectual knowledge. It's beyond the intellect. It's an experience more than knowledge. You know what you are on more like a feeling than an experience.
Yeah.
Or than an intellectual understanding, because all intellectual thoughts and constructs belong to the illusion. Yeah,
I just remember it was a spiritual teacher. It's called Papaji, also a guy from India. He said, like, if I knew that the self or God was within me, I wouldn't have wasted like 10-15 years trying to find an external God.
Yeah.
So once he has got this teaching to realize that the self is within me, God is within me, then he has turned inwards, and
yeah. But people will not turn inwards until they become frustrated, and it's a necessary process, but all will eventually reach this frustration and turn inward.
Yeah. I think in the religions we have, at least in the Western Christian religion, we have this view of an external God, which is I think it's not the correct one.
But I actually said one interesting thing about the established religions that I understood was quite good, because in many religions such as Islam, Christianity, and Judaism at least, they said you have to trust in God, in God's plan, and don't question him. And I always thought that was a bad thing. That was kind of, what a stupid, you have to trust yourself and all that. But what they explained during this journey is that when people in those religions do this practice of not questioning God, what they are training is actually not to ask questions and just trust the universe. But of course, the main wrong thing they do is that they do think that God is something external when it's something internal. But that doesn't really matter. The spiritual beings told me that they are actually training to go into this state of just trusting. Yeah. And then when they are ready, they will realize that they are going to trust themselves and not the external God. But the time inside the established religion has not been in vain. It's been very useful for a lot of people.
What I think it does more than anything is that it puts an end to your thoughts. Once you just put your trust into to God or to the universe or whatever you want to call it, it's you just go with things. You become more present in the now. You don't think about how things are supposed to be in your own mind.
They also said that during another experience that you have to learn to live with uncertainty. Yeah, that's a key to awakening. Just let uncertainty flow into your life. Don't worry about the outcome. Just do whatever you feel like, and go with it. Go with the flow and see what happens.
Yeah, that's when I mentioned Papaji again. That's what he had this like channel where he just had these intuitive feelings, or like he just trusted all the feelings that came to him, and he just now I'm gonna walk left, and then he walked left, and he ended up in a place where he met someone, or he came across some event that he was supposed to learn from.
And basically what they said, if you have this strong urge to I want to do that, they said do it, and don't worry about the consequences. But we do that a lot of time, and we don't do the things we want to do because of afraid of consequence of failure, or what would my mom and dad said, or anything like that, and income and things like that.
And I think it's so important to distinguish, and I think this is quite easy if you think about it, to distinguish of what the heart wants, what you truly want, and what the ego wants. For as long as you just try to create your reality based on your thoughts, your ego, like I want to be this because then I'm better than everyone else, so I'm going to earn a lot of money for myself. then I don't think it's the correct thing. But if you really have a desire from the heart to do it, that's the correct way to go for it.
I think most people know when the heart is calling about. It's another feeling actually than the egoistic one.
Yeah.
So after this, God started to talk about the hand.
Yeah.
And basically he said that the hand is, the reason we got a hand is to create things. We can build things with it and do a lot of things. And he also said that we have only started to begin to understand the true potential of the hand. I mean, we can do way more than we think with a hand.
And I just have to say that I remember one of my experiences where I was listening to music. This is like beautiful classical music with a guy called Michael Allen Harrison, I think his name. And the song is called Rapture. It's a beautiful classical piece with piano, really majestic.
Yeah.
And I just remember listening to it, and then I got this connection with the spirit world. And they said, like, listen to the music, listen to the piano. This is only possible because of the hand.
Yeah.
Like the hand is touching the keys and creating all this beautiful music.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of like looked at my hand and just realized that, my God, this thing is just brilliant. If you look at the external world and just see everything it has created, you realize that the hand is something truly amazing.
I mean, music, writing, you do everything with your hands. You create so much with your hands. But the main message was that it can do way more.
Okay.
I mean, one thing, the first thing that it showed me that you can do is like, you can do movements with your hand and fingers. And while you look at it, it will kind of hypnotize your ego. It will bring you into the now.
Yeah.
Because it has this kind of hypnotizing effect on you. Mm-hmm. And they kind of showed it like a conductor with orchestra moving his hands. It's kind of mesmerizing, and you move it around and your eyes will follow it and you get sucked into the moment.
Okay.
So that's one way you can use the hand to actually get into the now.
Sort of like a meditation with the hand.
Yeah, and they actually gave me later on a meditation that you use with your hand. But they also said that the hand is actually, and all of the parts of the body are actually functions that consciousness has different functions, such as the ability to create.
Yeah.
But that's an abstract function. But that function is actually manifested as the hand, as a direct physical experience. So our hand is the same as our function to create. This ability, our ability to create, God's ability to create is manifested as the hand.
Okay. So that's the hand is like our physical tool to practice this principle of creation.
Yeah, and since God can create everything and do create everything, including the external world, actually, they said, since the hand is this very ability, the hand can be used to influence our external world. Because that was my initial question. Why can I not influence my external world?
Yeah.
And they said, you can with your hand.
Okay.
You just don't know how to yet. You have not learned it yet. So within the hand, we have the power to actually change our external world, like this Jedi tricks, you know. And I was blown away, and they actually showed me a technique of this. And it's not only the hand, all of our body is manifestations of different abilities that our consciousness have.
Okay.
The brain, for instance.
Yeah. I just remember one experience I had when you say the brain.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the knowledge that we have. And I had this experience where I felt like my brain was external object.
Yeah.
Like a tool that I could use instead of just... and I felt like this was something that humans will evolve towards, just to see the brain as a tool instead of having association with the self, as we do today. We have the ego, we create the ego in our heads with our thoughts. But when I was in this state of awareness, it was so obvious that the brain is just an external tool. So for example, if I need to solve a mathematics equation or something like that, then I use my brain as a tool. Nothing more, nothing less either.
And God explained to me that all of our body is actually manifestations of different aspects of consciousness.
Yeah.
So if you look at consciousness, the self or God, it has different abilities. The ability to come up with ideas or imagination. That is manifested as the brain.
Yeah.
It has this ability to create. That is manifested as the hand. It has the ability to move, which is manifested as legs and arms and all that.
Yeah.
And it also has the ability to experience, which is manifested as eyes, ears, nose, feeling, taste, smell, all of that.
Yeah.
Sensory. And they said that all the different functions of consciousness has to be manifested in some way or another in the physical reality. And all living beings has all of these abilities manifested.
Yeah.
They can look different, but they are manifestations of the same abilities. So if you take an animal, all animals can move and have different sensations they can experience, and they can also influence their environment in different ways. And the more we evolve, we will be better and better at it, of course.
Yeah, and I think with this, if you look at it from this perspective, there's a whole new sense of appreciation for what you can experience with the body, what you can take part of. If you look in the animal kingdom, I mean, there's no animal out there except humans which have this experience. I mean, if you look at a horse, for example, it doesn't have the hand, it doesn't have the same mental capacity as we do. It's a more limited experience.
Yeah, but that's the way it goes, because we evolve and get more and more refined towards, we're becoming more and more God-like.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, you know, this one cell organism doesn't have the same kind of way to experience reality as we do. We have eyes, ears, but they don't. And we also have language, for instance. That's also
that's a big thing.
A way to manifest these ideas and things that we have. So we get better and better at it. And they actually told me that we will learn to use our hands to influence our external world. And they actually showed me how to do this.
Okay.
And this was quite an amazing experience, because I was lying on my sofa and suddenly I felt how God took hold of my hand and kind of took control of it and moved it through the room. And where my hand moved, the entire space kind of warped or was affected.
Okay.
So I could see this line where my hand had moved, where my arm had go, and the entire room was warped to some degree.
Okay.
And I was thinking, what the hell happened? What did you do?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I influenced your external world with your hand. And then he explained all of this, that you can actually do this, train this ability, and gave me a technique, a meditational technique to use your hand to create your, to influence your reality. It was basically a meditational technique involving the hand to manifest what you want in your life. But it's not what the ego wants. You had to be in the now during this, for this technique to work, because the ego has no power in the now. So what you will manifest is the will of the I, of the self. And that's basically what you really want anyway. Yeah. You don't want to manifest the ego's desires, because that's just going to end up in suffering anyway. Yeah. But they said you can actually you can focus on what you want to manifest. As long as it's not an egoistic thing, it will manifest. And I'm not going to go into this meditational technique right here in this episode. Yeah. But I had explained it in detail in my book. Probably I will do a separate video in the future showing it, how it's being done. But it's kind of cool. But the thing was that the thing about that the hand can actually do things.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and they only gave me one technique, and God kind of said that there's a lot of more things you can do as well. And he said humans will start to find more and more things that we can actually do as time passes.
Yeah, I think we are just beginning to scratch the surface of what is possible. Yeah. These kind of things are, if you look at the yogis, what they can through practice, what they can achieve or have achieved as well. you realize that there's a lot of things that we are capable to.
And if you realize that a hand is actually the very same thing as God's creative force, I mean, then you can start to imagine the possibilities here.
Yeah.
In the end, we will actually be able to create entire universes. But at that point, we will have left our physical bodies. And they also said this because of the meditational technique. I used the hand. The technique included the hand, and I asked God, well, what if a person doesn't have an arm, perhaps been in an accident or was born without arms?
Yeah.
And God said, well, the hand is actually not necessary. It's just the physical manifestation of this ability, but the ability is always there. So you can just imagine your hand or.
So what you're actually doing is you're focusing on your creative
force.
Yeah.
With the help of the hand, because we identify the hand with the creation. So, but it's actually all illusion anyway. So you never lose your creative force. It's just that it's a way to focus your energy.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
And I also said things like, I also asked, well, what if I want to create things that are egoistical? And they said, well, that's not going to happen. As I said, the ego has no power in the now. And you have to, this is a meditation, so you have to be in the now, be present. So nothing of that will manifest. And I also asked the question, well, what if I want to create a situation including other people that is lovingful, but still it has to do with other people? And doesn't that kind of override their free will? And they said, well, you're all one and you are God, so you can create a reality and that will manifest, because it's one possibility. So they said, well, it's no problem that other people are involved.
I mean, if when you talk about manifestation of trying to manifest your realities, I think it's only possible to manifest what is actually the higher consciousness will. As long as you try to do these manifestations with egoistical thoughts, what will happen is that the higher self or God or the universe will just try to no, that's not right. And give you the experience that will teach you to go closer to the self.
And after this, I had received this meditation. I felt kind of weird because I had never heard anything like it or read anything like it anywhere. And I asked, why me? Why have you given me this technique? This is apparently new to humanity. I don't know if perhaps it's out there somewhere, but I felt like, why hasn't any guru talked about this or some high level being? I felt kind of scared of being the one that's talking about this for the first time, perhaps. And God said, well, why are you afraid to be the first with something? Everyone in their kind of journey will do some discovery. It's the way it happens. All individuals throughout their evolution will have failures and big moments as well. So, so perhaps. So I'm going to share this technique. Of course, it's from God. I didn't invent it in any way. Well, in a way I did, because we're all God. But I didn't invent it any more than anyone else, because we're all God, of course. So, but I remember feeling kind of humble. And
I think that's when you go into these experiences and you have this contact with beings or God, if you will. It's important to remember that I'm receiving this. And not get too egoistic about this is me. And you go back to your normal being and you try to talk about all these information and everything like it's your findings, but it's things that are already out there. It's the self that's just trying to use us as instruments to talk.
And it doesn't matter who downloaded it first or something like that. And if you get puffed up about it, reality gonna
smack you down again.
I mean, as long as we're egoistical and have egoistical tendencies, we're gonna create suffering. That's the way it is. So that was quite an amazing journey, actually. And there's a few other things that are not really related to this. Perhaps I could throw in a few of them since we have time.
Sure.
one thing that we have talked a little bit about is that the self is actually this kind of nothingness and stillness. And from this stillness comes all ideas and fantasy, and actually everything we experience is actually an idea of God. It's imagination. We are living inside an imagination. We just believe it's real.
Yeah.
And since we believe it's real, we suffer because we cannot really accept how it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to not. Sometimes it's really hard to like not suffer in it because it feels so real. It's real to us, since you can feel all the emotions connected to it. I think now I mentioned Ramana Maharshi, who said he had a Westerner who asked him like, how do I not feel suffering? Well, don't see the world as real.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's really hard when you have like a really painful toothache to see that, this pain is just a thought. It's not real. That's like it's not that easy.
Well, it's not. And I thought I was going to read actually a quote from a book. It's a quote from God, word for word, what he said, because I can't remember it correctly. And I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
God said like this. Let's see where it is now. Yeah. So he was talking about that God, this is actually kind of imagination. And he said we, then he meant, I mean, all of us.
Yeah.
We are one.
Yeah.
We are truly imagination, and imagination is wonderful. We just experience what we want and just are. There is nothing else to understand. We have the ability to create and dream up anything to experience. Our consciousness and imagination has no limits. I think that's kind of cool quote that it really puts you into the perspective that all of this is God's imagination and we are living it. And as long as we look at it as just that and play with it and play along as a movie, you will not suffer, and it will be this most amazing journey ever.
Yeah, it's really going back to just trying to be the observer. Of just going to your true self, this stillness behind everything, and just enjoy the ride. And just see it.
And he also concluded one of the journeys with a message that I felt was really beautiful, actually, that God created all of this, and you and God are actually the same. We're just unconscious of that fact right now. So we're not really, I'm not talking about an external God here, even though sometimes you can have that feeling. But he said, I am hiding in all the details. In everything you are experiencing, I am there guiding you. Without you knowing it. You can never go lost. You're never alone. And feel safe in that knowledge. And that really touched me, knowing that, okay, I'm never left alone in this strange imagination, because the higher self is always watching and taking care that all of us will end up in his grace. All of us will come back to him and be him, of course. And I'm not talking about him as a guy, but as a consciousness. It's just that people tend to use him when they talk about God, but it's more it, actually.
And it, he, she, whatever you prefer. That's what you're associated with.
In Swedish, we have this wonderful word, hen, which means both he and she at the same time. I think all language should have that word. It's kind of cool. So and God is a hen.
And I think hen is a interesting word. Anyways, I lost my train of thought, but when you go into this life, everything that you experience, once I became observant that everything around me is God or myself or the higher self or whatever you want to call it, I started to realize that, or started to notice rather, that everything that happens in life is just there to teach me. And if I go into life with that approach, life will become so much easier.
Yeah.
Even though I suffer at times, even though I have great moments of enjoyment, there's always something there to like lead me back to the self.
Yeah, and it can sometimes can be hard to grasp that even the worst kind of suffering is actually there to make you evolve.
Yeah.
But you can find comfort in it. But some people find that idea kind of repulsive, that God would do something like that. But that's the way it is. And most people, when they look back at a tragedy with some distance, they can see the good in it. Yeah. That it led to something good.
Yeah. And it's something that we touched upon before, I think, in one of the earlier episodes. If you look at life from just one life perspective, it doesn't make sense. But if you put it into a higher perspective, then it adds up. It becomes more logical that, okay, I get to suffer this whole life, but perhaps in the next one, or I have learned my lesson. And
when you understand that when people die, they don't really die.
Yeah.
We cannot die.
Yeah.
We go to the spiritual world and then we reincarnate again. And we will do that until we wake up. And then we will not need to reincarnate again because we have learned. The physical world is a school, basically. A school on how to become God and become conscious of what we are. And once we have learned a lesson, we will leave this place for a much better one, which we have been visiting from time to time with the help of psychedelics. And it's quite a nice place. So
yeah, it's very, very nice place.
I'm one who will do my homework at least after seeing the reward.
Yeah, for sure. That's where the true cool stuff lie. Yeah.
So perhaps that's it for today.
Yeah, I think what do we have in store for the next episode?
Well, we'll see. There's a lot of more information, and I have a lot of information that I downloaded, and I know you have a few experiences as well. We'll see in which order we will take it.
Yeah, you'll just have to see in the next episode. So as always, go to meldorma.com if you want to see any more episodes, future or past episodes as well will be there. We also have like inspirational videos, and we will do shorter videos as well. You can find Magnus's book, The Illusion, there as well.
Yeah, the book I read from is called The Illusion, A Personal Journey Towards Spiritual Awakening. And in there I describe all of our journeys in great detail. I leave out a lot, of course, here. But in the book you can read the whole story. And it's also about a lot of theoretical understanding of the spiritual principles and things like that. So if you find it interesting, please pick it up.
Yeah.
And Tobias has also almost finished with his book, Stepping into the Unknown.
For sure. And you'll find, once you read the book, which I hope we will do, you'll find that it's pretty much what we talk about in this podcast. A lot of the experience I talked about here will be in the book, and as well as a lot more. And it's also about my life journey from being not awakened into having the first awakening, if you will, awakening to the spiritual, then my journey towards trying to find the self.
Yeah.
And all the teachings I have received up until that point.
Right.
So be sure to check it out.
Yeah, and also please visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube channel. And please subscribe or give us a like if you like what we do. It really helps. So yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for this episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.